Warning, this podcast contains unfiltered logic, unlicensed sarcasm, and prolonged exposure to American values. Listener discretion is advised, especially for those with a weak heart, a thin skin, or a subscription to the New York Times.
Welcome to Data and Dissonance, the only show that treats free speech not like a courtesy, but like a contact sport. We're broadcasting straight into your drive home with a mix of hard facts, harder opinions, and just enough humor to make you snort coffee out of your nose at a red light. Today's special guest? Oh, you're in for it. We've got Benjamin, our fast-talking, logic-slinging, fact-checking machine who sounds suspiciously like Ben Shapiro, but we promise he's even faster. And trust me, when the headlines are this ridiculous, you're going to need someone who can take apart the nonsense before the commercial break. Buckle up, folks. It's going to be a wild half hour. First up, Brian. The man could probably write MAGA on his morning toast with the butter knife and call it breakfast. If you disagree with him, don't worry. He'll just assume you're a secret Democrat and pray for you anyway. Then there's Daniel, our resident conspiracy theorist. If you think your day's complicated, remember this guy has a corkboard in his garage connecting George Soros' NASA moon landings and the recipe for Chick-fil-A sauce. Rachel, our independent thinker who somehow manages to annoy both sides of the aisle equally. She's the Switzerland of the panel, except with more sass and fewer mountains. And now, making his Data and Dissonance debut, Benjamin. Imagine someone took the energy of a double espresso, the precision of a Swiss watch, and the verbal velocity of a machine gun. Then fed it a steady diet of Federalist Papers and sarcastic Twitter threads. That's Benjamin. He's here to drop the receipts, the rebuttals, and possibly a few verbal body slams. Welcome to the battlefield, my friend. Today's episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series, my 3-part adrenaline shot to the brain disguised as a book series. If you like heroes who don't bend, villains you can almost understand, and stories that don't pull a single punch, grab the Covenant Protocol, the Prophet Directive, and be ready for Black Echo Rising coming in December right before Christmas. All on Amazon, all guaranteed to make you lose sleep in the best way possible. And while you're powering up your bookshelf, let's power up your wardrobe, and maybe your front yard. We've got the new I Identify as American line. Hoodies for the cold, decals for the truck, and even a garden flag so your lawn can talk back to your HOA. We've got the At Least I Know What a Woman Is shirt. Perfect for sparking conversations, or ending them before they start. And for my faith and freedom crowd, the Not Ashamed of the Cross or Constitution flag. Because some things you don't hide, you fly. All of it is up now in the shop, made in the USA, and designed to make your liberal neighbor's eye twitch just a little bit every time they see you. All right, first stop on today's ride. President Trump just signed an executive order telling federal banking regulators to investigate whether banks have been targeting conservatives, gun manufacturers, crypto companies, and other politically incorrect industries for debanking. And if they find proof, they've got 120 days to report it to the DOJ. Now, if you've been paying attention the last decade, this isn't some wild conspiracy. Banks have been quietly shutting down accounts under the cloak of risk management while pretending it's all about compliance. Translation: if they don't like what you stand for, they'll choke off your access to the financial system. Sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, except this chapter is being written in real time. Brian, you've been screaming about this for years. Your thoughts?
Screaming? Buddy, I've been warning about this louder than a preacher with a megaphone at a Vegas pool party. This is one of the most underreported, underappreciated forms of political warfare in the country. You think it's bad when they deplatform you on social media? Try getting your PayPal shut down, your business account frozen, or your merchant services yanked because some risk officer in New York doesn't like your bumper stickers. It's financial exile. And the left has been using it as a silent weapon for years. And it's not just about conservatives. It's about anyone outside the regime's narrative. Trump putting regulators on notice is like finally shining a floodlight into the back room of the casino. Suddenly, the dealers stop palming cards. But here's the thing, we better see action, not just press releases. I want heads to roll and policies rewritten. Anything less is political theater.
Rachel, I'm curious. What's your take? You're the independent in the room.
Look, I'm no fan of government overreach, whether it's coming from the left or the right, but this is one of those cases where oversight is absolutely necessary. We have anti-discrimination laws for housing, employment, and education. But apparently not for banking when the bias is ideological. That's insane. You can't have a free society if the gatekeepers to your financial life are operating like political commissars. My concern is, will this investigation be bipartisan in scope? Because if we're only looking at cases where conservatives got the short end of the stick and ignoring similar abuses on the other side, we're just playing a different flavor of the same game. Still, as a starting point, forcing banks to justify account closures with actual evidence instead of vibes is long overdue.
Daniel, I'm sure you've got a rabbit hole ready to dive down on this one.
Rabbit hole? My friend, this is the Warren. You want to know why this matters? Because financial control is the crown jewel in the playbook of authoritarian regimes. They don't need to throw you in prison if they can cut you off from your money. You can't hire a lawyer, you can't fund your cause, you can't even buy a cup of coffee without their blessing. Now look at who's been cozying up to the World Economic Forum, the IMF, and the UN banking initiatives. These aren't folks who believe in the messiness of free speech. They believe in approved speech. And the way you enforce that is by making dissenters economically irrelevant. Trump's move here isn't just a policy tweak, it's a line in the sand. But here's the conspiracy angle nobody's talking about. If regulators dig deep enough, they might find that some of this pressure on banks is coming from foreign actors who have a vested interest in seeing American dissent shrink. And if that comes out, oh baby, the headlines will be nuclear.
Speaking of nuclear, Benjamin, you've been quiet, and that's suspicious.
Suspicious? I'm just loading the ammo. Let's be clear, debanking is nothing more than political persecution with a financial facelift. The banks say it's about risk profiles, but somehow that risk always aligns perfectly with the political priorities of progressive activists. You'll notice no one's shutting down the accounts of groups that torch cities, but if you sell firearms or run a conservative blog, boom, sudden account closure. The beauty of Trump's EO is that it weaponizes the one thing bureaucrats fear, accountability with a deadline. 120 days isn't enough time for them to bury this under a 1,000-page report nobody reads. And to Rachel's point about bipartisanship, sure, investigate all bias. But right now, the overwhelming pattern is against the right. If we don't address that imbalance first, there won't be a right left to defend. This is about preserving the infrastructure of freedom before it collapses under targeted sabotage.
All right, next up, Texas. And I know what you're thinking. What now? Well, this time, it's a full-blown political road trip. A pack of Texas Democrats decided they didn't want to stick around and lose a vote on the new Republican-led redistricting plan, one that President Trump himself is backing. So they bolted. Not just to the next county, not to hide in a barbecue joint, but all the way to Illinois. Apparently, they think democracy dies in the Lone Star State unless they're live tweeting from the lobby of a Chicago Marriott. And now, the pièce de résistance. They're sending out donation pleas to keep the walkout going. Yeah, nothing says for the people like asking the people to pay for your extended stay at the Hyatt. Brian, you've been on a tear about political theater before. Does this rise to the level of a Shakespearean tragedy? Or are we talking more like an improv night at a bad comedy club?
Oh, this isn't Shakespeare. It's a road trip comedy where the plot falls apart halfway through, but the cast still wants to get paid. You can almost hear the conversation. Hey, we can't win this vote, so let's pack up, call it resistance, and see if we can expense it. They fled the state like the IRS just raided the family reunion, and the moment they hit Illinois soil, They cracked open the laptop and fired off the first send money email. This isn't civil disobedience. It's a vacation package wrapped in political spin. You know how they always say optics matter? Well, the optics here are Democrats lounging in hotel lobbies, eating deep dish, and telling voters back home how hard they're working. And don't get me wrong, Republicans have pulled walkouts before, but here's the difference. The GOP doesn't usually have the luxury of being applauded for dereliction of duty. Imagine the outrage if conservatives ran off to Florida mid-session and opened a GoFundMe titled, "Help Us Keep Not Working." The media would set up a permanent live feed outside their hotel door.
So what you're saying is, if we ever decide to skip a week of this podcast, we just need to make it sound like we're on the run for the greater good. Folks, we can't record because we're hiding from the HOA, but your donations will keep us stocked with beef jerky and Wi-Fi. I might be onto something here. Rachel, you're our reality check. How does this play outside of Twitter and the Chicago press corps?
Not well, and here's why. Most voters, no matter their party, expect the people they elect to at least show up and do the job. Procedural walkouts have a place, but you have to sell them as a principled stand, not a mid-session field trip. The minute you start asking the public to fund your absence, you've lost the moral high ground. This isn't Selma in the 60s. It's more like high school seniors cutting class and then passing around the hat to cover pizza money. And the irony is rich. They'll go on cable news and call Republicans anti-democratic, all while abandoning the democratic process because they don't like the math. That's not protecting democracy. It's proof they don't understand how it works. You want to stop a vote? Fine. Make your case. Argue it in the chamber and take your loss like adults. But disappearing to another state and live streaming your moral outrage over pancakes? That's the kind of stunt that plays well on MSNBC, but backfires with people who actually live in Texas. The folks back home see it for what it is. A photo op disguised as courage.
So basically, recess for grown-ups. They should have brought juice boxes, maybe a couple of hopscotch mats. Daniel, I know you see this as part of some bigger chessboard. Is this just grandstanding, or is there a deeper, maybe even darker layer to this stunt?
Oh, there's a strategy here. And it's not subtle. They know the redistricting plan will pass the second they step foot back in Texas. So instead of losing in the chamber, they shift the battle to the public stage. It's about narrative control and fundraising, plain and simple. This walkout is less about blocking lines on a map and more about drawing new battle lines for 2026 by casting themselves as the brave defenders of fair representation. They create a rallying cry for their base and a donor pipeline in one move. And the media eats it up. Fawning coverage, softball interviews, sympathetic headlines. Meanwhile, those donations, they don't just pay for hotel rooms. That cash flows into campaign accounts, grassroots groups, and political consultants. This is a political investment disguised as moral outrage. But here's the gamble. They're counting on Texans to forget by the next election. My bet? They won't. Texans have long memories for political cowardice, and this could stick like barbecue sauce on a white shirt.
Barbecue sauce on a white shirt? Now there's a campaign slogan waiting to happen. Benjamin, you're new here, but you've been locked and loaded all day. Give us your take.
All right, let's call this what it is. Dereliction of duty wrapped in a fundraising pitch. These lawmakers swore an oath to represent their constituents, not to take off across state lines the second the vote looked bad. And the gall to ask for donations while doing it, that's next level grift. They're essentially monetizing political cowardice, and the hypocrisy is staggering. If Republicans had pulled this stunt, we'd see non-stop headlines about the death of the Republic, constitutional crises, and probably some dramatic footage of empty chairs in the chamber set to ominous music. But because it's Democrats, it's treated like a quirky road trip, complete with photo ops and hashtags. This isn't resistance. It's a retreat, and the people footing the bill are the very voters being denied representation. That's not just bad politics, it's an insult to the democratic process itself.
Quirky road trip. I swear, if I see a photo of them piling out of a rented Sprinter van with "Democracy or Bust" spray painted on the side, I'm making it the new show logo. Somebody get me that on a bumper sticker. All right, final main topic before we hit the lightning rounds and recurring segments. Nancy Mace. Yeah, that Nancy Mace. South Carolina Congresswoman. Sometimes moderate, sometimes flamethrower, depending on which way the wind's blowing that day. Well, she's decided she's done being just a name in the House roster and is throwing her hat, probably a red one, into the ring for South Carolina governor. And let me tell you, she's coming in hot. The woman has spent the last few months setting rhetorical fires on social media, hammering the transgender issue, hitting every conservative buzzword like she's checking them off a shopping list, and making sure everyone knows she's not the centrist Nancy they might remember. Now, whether you love her or think she's about as authentic as a gas station Rolex, you can't deny she's making a play for the MAGA lane hard enough to give the other candidates whiplash. Brian, this is your bread and butter. What's the MAGA jury's verdict?
Here's the thing about Mace. She's smart, she's tough, and she knows how to read a room. The problem is, sometimes she's reading two rooms at once and trying to please them both. But credit where it's due, this version of Nancy Mace is not playing around. She's going straight for the throat on cultural issues, and in South Carolina, that's not just political theater, it's survival strategy. She knows the GOP base there wants a fighter who's unapologetic, especially on hot-button topics like gender policy and school curriculum. The question is, will voters believe her transformation, or will they remember the time she's played nice with the middle? MAGA voters have long memories when it comes to who stood strong when the heat was on and who blinked. She's walking a tightrope, leaned too far into the firebrand persona, and she risks alienating moderates. Lean too soft and she loses the base. But if she sticks the landing, she could be a serious contender.
So basically, she's playing political twister, hoping she doesn't pull a muscle in front of the crowd. Rachel, you're our resident independent. Does Mace's shift look like conviction to you or a calculated costume change?
It looks calculated, and I say that as someone who actually respects strategy in politics. Mace is smart enough to know that the old middle-of-the-road approach doesn't get you headlines, and in a crowded conservative primary, headlines are currency. The sudden escalation in her rhetoric is not accidental. It's a targeted rebrand meant to plant her flag firmly in the culture war camp. And I get it. That's where the attention is. And in modern politics, attention equals momentum. But here's the problem. If it feels inauthentic, it will hurt her. Voters don't mind if you evolve on an issue, but they hate feeling like they're watching an actor read a script. The more extreme her pivot looks, the more she risks being painted as an opportunist rather than a true believer. And trust me, her opponents will make sure every single moderate or centrist vote she's ever taken will be front and center in attack ads. She's playing a high-risk, high-reward game, and the margin for error is razor thin.
So in other words, she's speed-running the how to win over MAGA course while praying no one remembers her old yearbook photo. Daniel, you're the one who always suspects there's a bigger board in play. Is this just about South Carolina, or is Mace aiming at something bigger?
Bigger, always bigger. Governor of South Carolina is not just a political prize. It's a launch pad. You win that, and you immediately get mentioned in VP chatter, cabinet positions, maybe even a presidential run down the road. Mace knows this. That's why you're seeing her hit the talking points that matter not just in her state, but nationally. Border security, parental rights, the whole cultural pushback against progressive overreach. She's building a brand that plays well in conservative circles, coast to coast. But here's where the conspiracy-minded part of me starts connecting dots. There's money coming into her campaign from outside South Carolina already, and that tells me she's being quietly groomed by certain national power players as the next big thing. It wouldn't surprise me if she's already had conversations with party strategists about where this could go beyond the governor's mansion. And if that's the case, this campaign is as much about proving she can be a national figure as it is about winning the state.
So she's not just playing the state game, she's already shopping for the bigger boardroom. Benjamin, you've been taking notes like a court stenographer over there. Hit us with your take.
All right, here's the read. Nancy Mace is smart, but she's not subtle. The pivot to hard-right rhetoric is too sharp and too sudden for anyone who's been paying attention not to notice. That doesn't mean it won't work. Politics is full of people who successfully reinvent themselves, but the trick is to do it slowly enough that people think it's genuine. She's doing it at 200 miles an hour, and that's risky. On the plus side, she's saying exactly what a large chunk of the base wants to hear, and she's doing it with enough confidence that it sounds like conviction. The challenge will be consistency. If she slips back into moderate language even once in a key moment, the fake conservative label will stick. But if she keeps this up, hammers the culture war points, and makes her opponents look weak or indecisive, she could not only win, but become a national conservative darling overnight. The only question is whether she's willing to burn every bridge to the middle to do it.
Burn every bridge to the middle? At this rate, she's going to need a boat just to get across the political river. Somebody get her a paddle with MAGA engraved on it. And before we jump into the Patriot Minute, let's talk about how you can wear your attitude on your sleeve, or in this case, your chest, your head, and even your coffee mug. First up, the 1776 shirt. Simple, bold, and unapologetic. No slogans, no fluff. Just a reminder that America had its best idea that year. Then there's the American Spirit Patriot Blend Tea, aged to perfection. 0 snowflakes allowed, distilled in freedom by the men, women, and legends who built this country. For your morning dose of sarcasm, we've got the Liberal Tears mug. Perfect for coffee, tea, or just reminding people that you don't take lectures from folks who think socialism works. And if you really want to say what's on your mind without opening your mouth, the 0 fucks given hat and tea are exactly as advertised. Pure attitude, no apologies. My Gen X brothers and sisters, you're not left out. We've got the Generation X, built different raised right mug so you can caffeinate while letting everyone know why you survived the 80s without a helmet or participation trophies. And speaking of caffeinating, our very own Data and Dissonance coffee blends are still here. High Lake's light roast for the bright and citrusy mornings, Rock Creek medium roast for that sweet spot of balance and flavor, and Bitterroot dark roast for the days when you need your coffee strong enough to chew. Every bag is roasted in the USA, available whole bean or ground, and designed to pair perfectly with triggering your least favorite coworker. All right, time for Brian's MAGA Fire, where the volume's always at 11 and the takes are hotter than the asphalt in a Texas July. Brian, what's cooking today?
What's cooking? Freedom, my friend, and it's being served extra spicy this week. Let's talk about the beauty of watching the left lose its mind every time President Trump actually keeps a campaign promise. The debanking order? Oh, they're clutching their pearls so hard, you'd think the stock market just banned avocado toast. The border? Trump's got the National Guard so dug in, it's like they're building a new Hoover Dam out of barbed wire and common sense. And every time the man opens his mouth, they act like the Republic is on life support. Meanwhile, their side is the one bailing on state legislatures and asking for hotel money. The thing they can't wrap their heads around is this. America is tired of being told to sit down, shut up, and let the elites handle it. We don't want managers. We want fighters. And if that fighter happens to tweet like a wrecking ball, all the better. That's not chaos, that's course correction.
From MAGA fire to a corner of the garage where every headline is connected by red yarn. It's Daniel's conspiracy board. Daniel, what's pinned up this week?
Oh, I've got a doozy for you. Everyone's talking about the Texas walkout and Trump's bank probe like they're separate stories. But what if I told you they're two sides of the same coin? Think about it. Political walkouts, media framing, and the quiet influence of global finance all intersect in the same playbook. The WEF, IMF, and a few alphabet soup agencies have been pushing for centralized control over financial systems, and they know the fastest way to get it is to delegitimize dissent. The Texas Democrats' stunt gets painted as noble. Conservative lawmakers doing the same thing would be called fascists. That's not just bias, that's narrative engineering. And when you pair that with pressure on banks to cut ties with the wrong kind of customers, you start seeing the architecture of control. First, they limit your speech, then your reach, then your ability to fund your opposition. And the scariest part? Most people won't even notice until the cage door shuts. It's a slow, quiet coup, folks. One headline at a time.
All right, Daniel's got half the audience checking their closets for black helicopters, so let's bring in Rachel with the Red Pill Rant. Your weekly dose of reality checks and uncomfortable truths. Rachel, floor's yours.
Here's the uncomfortable truth. Both parties are playing the same long game, and the only people losing are the voters. We just spent a week talking about how Democrats are fleeing states and Republicans are passing legislation that will absolutely get challenged in court. The end result is the same. Nothing changes for the average person. You're still paying too much for groceries. Your kid's school is still a political battlefield. And your city's roads look like they were bombed by a toddler with a jackhammer. Meanwhile, the culture war keeps everyone too distracted to notice the bipartisan failures happening in plain sight. Taking the red pill means realizing that cheering for your team doesn't mean they're always fighting for you. Sometimes they're just fighting for the camera, for the donors, and for the next headline. And if you don't start holding them all accountable, don't be surprised when nothing changes, because that's exactly how they like it.
This week's Patriot Minute is dedicated to those who stood for us, our veterans, and to the organizations that continue to stand with them. If you're wondering where your support can make the greatest impact, let me introduce you to Semper Fi and America's Fund. Since 2004, this organization has delivered immediate financial assistance and lifelong support to wounded, critically ill, and injured service members and their families across all branches of our armed forces. With over $312 million provided to more than 31,000 recipients, they operate with a lean 7% overhead, earning an A+ rating from Charity Watch and a Platinum Seal of Transparency from GuideStarCharityWatch.org. They're not about glossy videos or celebrity endorsements. They're about real aid, covering medical bills, home modifications, caregiving support, and that critical bridge from battlefield to living room. When we talk about honoring service, donating to groups like this, where your dollars go straight to people who served, means something. If you've ever felt the pull to do more for those who've done everything for us, start here. That's your Patriot Minute. All right, folks, we've covered a lot today. Trump's executive order on debanking, the Texas Democrats' Disappearing Act, and Nancy Mace's Governor Gamble. We've fired up the MAGA flame, dug deep on the conspiracy board, and swallowed a few hard truths from the Red Pill Rant. But before we sign off, I want each of the panelists and Benjamin to leave you with something to chew on this weekend. Brian, lead us off.
You know what this week reminded me of? That no matter how loud the left screams, no matter how many headlines they spin, the fight isn't over until we stop showing up. The debanking order is proof that when conservatives take power, they can actually reverse the slow choke the establishment has been putting on everyday Americans. But it's also a reminder, elections have consequences both ways. We can't just win once and coast. We have to win consistently in every race from city councils to the Oval Office. The opposition never stops pushing, never stops scheming, and never stops using whatever power they have to tilt the board. If we want to keep this country free, we have to match that energy, not just in voting booths, but in our conversations, our communities, and our culture. Freedom isn't a gift, it's a muscle. And if you stop using it, it gets weak.
That's Brian with the fitness tip of the day. Freedom gains, baby. Rachel, your turn. What's your final word?
My final thought is this. Don't get so wrapped up in winning the fight for your side that you forget to fight for the truth. Yes, this week showed us blatant hypocrisy, political theater, and strategic opportunism. But it also showed us that people on both sides are capable of bending the rules to fit their goals. And if we just excuse it because our team did it, we're setting the precedent for them to do it again when it hurts us. The red pill doesn't just wake you up to the lies of the other side. It forces you to face the flaws in your own camp too. Hold everyone accountable. Demand transparency, demand honesty, and demand results. Because when the dust settles, it's not about red or blue. It's about whether the country you leave to your kids is better than the one you got handed.
Daniel, I see you nodding like you just found a new string for the conspiracy board. What's your closer?
What I want people to walk away with is that none of these stories, whether it's financial suppression, political walkouts, or sudden ideological pivots, happen in a vacuum. They're connected, and the connective tissue is power. Power protects itself, builds networks, and manipulates the playing field to keep itself entrenched. When you see banks making political choices, when you see lawmakers literally fleeing the democratic process, when you see sudden hard turns in rhetoric from politicians, it's all part of the same cycle. They're not reacting to us, they're reacting to each other, to donors, to global narratives, to forces that most voters never get to see. The more you understand those connections, the harder it is for them to pull the wool over your eyes. And once enough people see the web for what it is, the web loses its strength.
Benjamin, you're the new kid here. Bring it home before I close us out.
This week made one thing clear. Clarity itself is a weapon, whether it's understanding that debanking is financial censorship, seeing that political walkouts are more about optics than principles, or recognizing when a politician's reinvention is strategic, the ability to cut through the noise is what keeps you free. The establishment thrives on confusion and distraction, because if you're arguing over the surface drama, you're not questioning the deeper structure that creates it. My advice is simple. Get good at cutting to the core of a story. Ask who benefits, who loses, and what changes if nothing is done. If you can answer those three questions, you'll never be caught flat-footed in a political fight. And right now, staying on your feet is half the battle.
When you strip away all the noise from this week, the sound bites, the social media outrage, the political gamesmanship, you're left with one hard truth. Power doesn't give itself up willingly. Whether it's banks quietly choking off the financial lifelines of people they disagree with, lawmakers vanishing across state lines to avoid a vote, or politicians reinventing themselves overnight to grab headlines, every move is about securing and keeping power. And the thing they all fear on both sides is an informed, engaged public that won't play along. That's why you're here, listening to this show, soaking up the details the headlines won't give you and arming yourself with perspective. Because the second we stop paying attention, the second we get comfortable, is the moment we hand them the keys without even realizing it. The fight for freedom isn't a once-in-a-generation battle. It's a daily discipline. And if you think you can sit this one out, history has a way of showing up at your door to prove you wrong. So as we head into the weekend, remember this. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and stay loud. Have the conversations they tell you not to have. Ask the questions they don't want answered. And never, ever let them convince you that your voice doesn't matter, because that's exactly how they win. We'll be back Monday to cut through the next pile of headlines and find the truth they tried to bury. Until then, remember to speak truth, stir thought,